Well, good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon by a few seconds, I guess, isn't it? But good afternoon. Welcome to the webinar. A few seconds of flannel while we wait for people to join. Just a few more we can see coming in there. So we're just going to give, we'll start soon and very soon. We'll just give people just a few more seconds for the electrons to dance down the wires and for their screens to fire up. Well, just to introduce ourselves, Darren, my colleague, who you've been hearing from with the reminders, Darren's my colleague. He's a senior account manager here. He's going to log any questions that you might want to throw into the chat, and he's going to keep me in order and help me keep the time. I'm Guy Letts. I'm founder of CustomerSure way back in 2010, and over the last 10 years or so, we've helped clients start collecting feedback and measuring Net Promoter Score in hundreds of companies so far, actually, all around the world. That means we've learnt some very valuable lessons with all sorts of wonderful people, actually. The joy and the nature of our business, because we're working with people like you guys, they're people who get customer service and customer satisfaction. So all of our customers are actually delightful to work with. So we've learnt some valuable lessons along the way, and we'd like to share them today so that whether or not you end up using our software, maybe even if you use somebody else's software, the aim today is we want to save you some time. We want to help you avoid all the bear traps, and we want to help you make your customer feedback program a great success. Now, my background before working here, up until 2010, I was head of customer services in a great big FTSE 100 company. We had hundreds of thousands of customers. And despite it being a big, famous, prestigious company, I'm embarrassed to say that we were measuring customer satisfaction in a very wrong-headed way. Our Net Promoter Score was actually pretty good, but our revenue in some areas was going down, and that's, as you probably know, that's not how it's supposed to work. So we were getting something wrong. We weren't unusual in doing it badly, by the way. It's the way most companies did it then. And actually, it's the way many companies still do it. So my first bit of advice is please don't just copy the next email and satisfaction survey that comes and lands into your inbox, because the way it's traditionally been done actually rarely benefits the business in a significant way. The customer satisfaction dial is often very loosely connected, if at all, from the revenue and profit dial. So that means it's often a waste of time and money and just an extra project for people who are already busy. Now, we all get those surveys, don't we? Long surveys, poor questions, lots of duplication in the questions, and then we're hit on one and it's, oh, that's an interesting score. Please tell us why you gave us that score. And sometimes it actually feels like you're being punished for giving an answer because you just get another question popping up. And after you've finished all the questions, you'll read something along the lines of, your feedback is really important to us. And so you click the submit button, and then, well, unless you're any different from me, you get tumbleweed, just the sound of crickets in the distance. You, the customer, never get a response, even if you flagged up a serious problem. And it leaves you feeling, probably leaves you feeling like you've wasted your time. So the end result of the whole process is no benefit for the business, because nobody's read it. And it's a terrible experience for customers, which, if it wasn't so frustrating, would actually be quite funny, because all this madness is being done by people who say or claim that they're on a mission to improve customer experience. So today, we're going to help you do better. We're aiming for a strong, positive benefit for the business, which often leads to more brownie points for you too, actually, if you're leading the project, because you'll get the credit for it. And we're aiming to make, so that's from the business point of view, and from the customer's point of view, we're trying to make giving feedback a great experience. And by the way, if you hadn't connected those two ideas, this is how you solve two age-old problems. How do you get the best response rates? Because once you start getting feedback, you find it really, really useful and you want some more. How do you get best response rates? And how do you get the best quality data, the best quality nuggets of gold, those insights that really help you? Well, you get the highest response rates and the best insights by making feedback a great experience for customers not a terrible one. So in the remaining minutes, we're going to try and run crisply to time, because we know everybody's busy, but so bite-sized lessons, and we're going to go through the things that you'll have seen on the agenda. You don't need to scribble furiously. If you want to get notes, we'll send out a recording of the whole thing afterwards, and we'll send a follow-up email with further information and some things that I'm going to cross-reference, because I haven't got time to cover those topics in detail in the session. So we'll send you some more information afterwards. Before we get into how to start, which is the main event today, so the warm-up act, if you like, is just a quick recap on why to start, because it is important to be clear about the goals so that you can make sure your plan for starting will deliver those goals. So the first point to make is that although we're here to talk about how you start collecting feedback, actually collecting feedback should never be the goal. That's the bad old way that we want some data about customers. Let's send out some surveys. Great, we've got some data. Well, at that point, you've got the data, mission accomplished, but well, the customer's still hanging on, waiting for a reply. And similarly, finding out your NPS score or your CSAT score should not be the goal. They're going to be incredibly useful, but those things are just a means to an end. So what should the goal be? Well, anyone who listened to the last webinar will know about setting the best strategy, where we covered the goals. You might remember that your overall goal should be no different from your existing business goals. It should be the same one. And your business goal might be to grow, it might be to increase customer numbers or increase revenue or increase profit, or maybe in a not-for-profit organization, is simply just to deliver the best service and the best outcomes to your service users. Well, whatever the goal is, keep the goal of your feedback project doing that. Don't set up a separate cottage industry of data and measures and targets that's different from the overall goal, because the two will divide, and that's where you get the disconnect between the satisfaction dial and the revenue figures. And what we want to do is make sure those two things move in lockstep. So here we're going to collect feedback so that you can find and fix issues quickly, like a slick, well-oiled machine. You may be already like that, but we'll hope to do it even better. And that leads to having customers who think you're brilliant, and having customers who think you're brilliant feeds through to make your business even more successful by spending more, staying longer, word of mouth referrals, personal recommendations, and so on. So, is the best way to get started just to get started? The temptation clearly can be just to get on with it. How hard can it be? Just send out a few surveys, get some data. When you've got the data, analyze it, and then decide to do based on what you get. Well, that sounds sensible, doesn't it? And I'm very sympathetic to keeping things simple. But at CustomerSure, you'll get straight talking if you haven't really worked that out yet, but it's based on years of hard-won experience. So to save time, I'll tell you straight, just getting started is a terrible idea, which will immediately make customer experience worse. And the reason for that is because it assumes, and this is actually the major flaw in all those models that I described earlier, it assumes there's only one type of feedback. The type where customers want to fill in your big long survey, give you the feedback, which they're happy for you to then go away and process at your leisure at some time in the future when you've got enough data or you've got a spare moment. When does that ever happen? In a way which is completely invisible to them. And later, probably much later, they will maybe, just maybe, see that you've made a change to your products or your processes, your systems, policies, or people's behavior based on what they've said in their feedback. And probably then only if a lot of other people said exactly the same as you did. But crucially, it won't make any difference to their experience with your company in the short term, whereas that's actually what they really want. Or by the time the improvement does filter through, you think, haha, we've done it, we've done what you asked for, you all asked for this, we've done it. Well, by that time, they may have voted with their feet and gone somewhere else. So no customer ever wants feedback to work like that, despite the fact that's how widespread the model normally is. No customer ever wants to spend time filling in a survey and then to feel like they've been completely ignored. So although it's by far the most common model, actually, including with companies who you would have thought should know better, it's a terrible model. Please don't do it like that. So let's move on and think about a much better way. And actually, the key to getting it right is to understand that there's more than one type of feedback. Fortunately, there are only 3, so it's manageable. And the key to making your feedback process one that your customers will love rather than hate is how well you are geared up to handling those 3 different types of feedback. So we'll come back to the 3 types just in a moment, but for now the lesson is don't just fling out some surveys and hope for the best, because bad things will happen. So here's a high-level summary of what the model should be, what the outline plan should be for starting to collect feedback. There's just a few things that you need to think through first. They're all sensible things like sorting out roles and responsibilities. They're all sensible things like don't wait for the feedback to come in before you think about what you're going to do with it. You don't want to be on the back foot. And crucially, you don't want those customers who are happily, expectantly filling in your feedback forms to suddenly give you a cry for help, only to find that you're on the back foot. You've got a flood of feedback coming in. You can't possibly, you're not resourced, you're not geared up. And actually, you probably don't need extra headcount to do this. You just need to think it through. And in all likelihood, plug into different processes. So if you've got a complaint, for example, through another channel, through an email or a telephone call, you've probably got a process or somebody you give it to. If you've got a suggestion for improvement, or if somebody needs service recovery, they complain about a problem with their billing, you've probably got a process that you feed that into. Well, if you think it through in advance before you get started, you can connect up to those existing resolution methods so that when the feedback comes in, you're on the front foot and you can start dealing with it straight away. So in your plan, these things are all designed to make sure you cover what you're going to do once you start sending surveys out and how you're going to blow your customers' socks off when they respond with their feedback. Now, thinking through that step in the middle of in the plan around close the loop, let's now go back to those 3 types of feedback that you need to prepare for. And it's pretty straightforward, but sometimes only in hindsight. So the first type of feedback, and probably if you're listening in on this webinar, you're already doing a great job. And there will already be customers who love you. It's probably in the DNA or the culture of your organization to serve customers well. We often find that it's people we often find we're talking to people who do well and just want to keep doing better because that's important to their business. So your customers and your colleagues are probably already doing a great job, which means praise will come in as part of the mix of the feedback you get. And it's important to feed that through to those people who've delivered the great service. So it's nice if I'm answering the phones and somebody says, "Oh, guys are cracking. I love it when I get through to Guy." It's great for me to hear that because that's more motivation for me to keep doing the job and positive reinforcement that I'm doing the right things. So being geared up for when the praise comes in, how are you going to channel that through and make sure it gets right to the right people as positive reinforcement? Second type of feedback, service improvement. And this is probably the closest to the one type that everybody assumes there is. You think that people are going to just tell you stuff about how to improve your business. And these are suggestions. It might be an improvement to the product. It might be an improvement to your policies or your systems, potentially your people's languages and behaviors. But although one person suggests it, when you make the improvement, it actually improves things for everybody. You know, a rising tide floats all boats. So the difference between this one and the next one is just timescale. Service improvement. Customers actually don't expect you to do it overnight. If they say there's too many steps in your ordering process, or I don't like your on hold music, or whatever it is, they don't expect you to change overnight. It's just nice to get a reply saying, "That's a great suggestion. Thank you. We're going to plan that in." Or, "That's a great suggestion. actually, we have thought of that before. Here's why we're not doing it. But just to get an intelligent response means I don't feel like I wasted my time giving feedback. I've got an intelligent response. That's actually all I wanted. The final type of feedback, or the third main bucket, is service recovery. So processes, procedures, policies, systems, probably all of those are pretty much fine. I've got no complaint with those, but something's gone wrong, just for me. Maybe I've phoned 3 times about an invoice that's incorrect and nobody's returning my calls. So, feedback invitations landed in my inbox. I've made it clear to you. I've said there's, generally speaking, I love you guys, but I'm having a real problem with this. I'm at the end of my tether. It's a cry for help, really. It's I want to keep my business with you because it's a real hassle going somewhere else, but I'm just getting a bit frustrated. So it's, like I said, the time scale between service improvement, where you can be a bit more relaxed and plan it in, this one, you need to fix it within minutes. Pick up the phone, apologize, or drop them an email saying, I'm going to sort that for you, or plug it into that whatever resolution channel you've identified in your plan. That's the way to take these cries for help and turn the people who just turn from loving you to having a bit of a niggle, you turn those back onto full-on ambassadors. And by the way, that's one of the key differences between collecting feedback or measuring satisfaction and improving it. So where are we up to? We've done how customer feedback can make a positive impact. Now, which metric to choose? Metrics are great, aren't they? We've got so many metrics and things. Metrics help you measure progress. They give your teams a number to focus on. It's really good for them to have a number that they can trust and believe, and that gives some feedback. They're great for reporting up the line, across the line. But in customer satisfaction, I guess, as in some other areas, people get hung up on which one's best. And to some extent, they seem to come and go with the fashion. I've lived through, gosh, since starting working in the 80s, I've lived through several cycles of different fashions on quality management and service, and there are some that are flavour of the month. Fortunately, I'm going to tell you, it's very easy to choose between those 3 metrics, and I'll explain how. But remember that none of them, like any other tool, none of them is a silver bullet. Whatever anybody might claim for them or might tell you, they're just different ways of doing more or less the same thing. And that thing is measuring satisfaction, not improving it. The measure doesn't actually improve it. So don't get your hopes too high about what any given metric can do for you. But on the plus side, don't worry about picking the wrong one, because that doesn't matter much either. There isn't a wrong one. Let me explain why. So imagine you're making a cake and you say, which scale will I choose for measuring my ingredients? Will I choose the spring scale or the digital scale? That one probably give me a really accurate measurement. Maybe that's important, or just a balance scale. Well, the quality of cake, as you probably, we all know, the quality of cake is based on what you do with the ingredients after you've measured them. And a good baker can make a delicious cake using any of these measuring scales. So the quality of the cake depends very, very little on the measuring tool, and much, much more on the quality of the ingredients, the recipe, and the skills and experience of the baker. So don't confuse measuring customer satisfaction with improving customer satisfaction. You can measure it with any, don't fret about the metric. Or put it another way, if I may be blunt again, if you haven't got the right strategy and plan, it genuinely doesn't matter which metric you pick. None of them will save your bacon, but none of them is a bad choice either. So pick the one you like, or smarter move, pick the one your boss likes. Sometimes we're in a position where people say, we'd like to do Net Promoter. Many people don't, and some of our existing customers, I'm not going to name any names, some of our existing customers don't actually know how to calculate Net Promoter, but they use it because it's what they're supposed to use in their business. And actually they get good results because they use it well. They focus on the comments from customers and the feedback, and the score is actually just a kind of a measure or an indicator along the way of where to shine the spotlight for improvement. They don't overstate the importance of the score. Better still, you can actually use all three if you use them at the appropriate time and the appropriate way. For Net Promoter Score, we're actually licensed Net Promoter Score vendors, but we'd be the first to admit that the Net Promoter Score question, how likely would you be to recommend our company, that's not always the best question to ask. It's certainly not the only question you should ask, even though it's sometimes described as the ultimate question or the only question you'll ever need. An example of when not to use it is don't ask it too early. That would be a bit like going on a first date with somebody and asking your date if they love you when you plunk the drinks down on the table. Well, great question, but way too soon and very, very creepy. It's the same with the would you recommend us question for a new customer. That can actually be quite frustrating. They'll tell you they don't know yet because they haven't had a time to judge, and actually it's a bit awkward that you're asking me this soon. Our software supports all three, and you can use any or all of them. Just briefly, we find Net Promoter Score is useful for measuring the overall quality or loyalty of the customer. What's all things considered, taking into account all my dealings with you, how likely would I be to recommend you? And recommend is quite a high bar, isn't it? That's putting my personal reputation on the line and being confident enough in the service that I've received from you that I'm confident that my friend or my colleague is likely to get the same. You've given me enough confidence in consistency and the values and the capabilities in your company that it's a pretty safe bet to recommend you without me looking bad. So the recommend is quite a good bar, and it's taking into account all the factors, isn't it? So, well, I'd recommend you, but you're rubbish at responding to emails, or it's a good way of crunch. It's kind of good crunch question. CSAT is good for measuring quality. So how satisfied are you with the advice that you just received when you just called us, or how satisfied are you with the quality of our products? So CSAT good for measuring quality. An effort score, customer effort score, how easy are we to deal with? Self-explanatory, that one I think. So where are we up to? The remaining ones are a bit faster. You'll be pleased to know when and when not to use reviews. So this one sometimes causes a bit of confusion. So surveys actually constitute three different types of customer feedback. So going right to left here, market research. Well, this is probably a separate discipline. Market research is in many ways, it's a science. It's important to ask questions which are thorough and they're not biased or leading. So the questions in a market research, proper market research document done by somebody qualified, questions tend to be quite long. Market research surveys, it's legitimate for them to be also long because they might be, the goal of doing the market research might be to support a case for investment, which could be millions of pounds, and you're doing the market research to test the market and get attitudes and so on. So in market research, many things are important that aren't important in customer satisfaction. So having long questions that are completely neutral, having multi-dimensional matrices to kind of weed out and avoid bias and consistency in the answers. So they tend to be quite long. We're not going to focus anymore on those. It's a separate thing. You might just do a sample of customers as well. So it really boils down to what's the difference, or is there a difference between reviews and customer feedback? And there is. And it boils down actually to who's the beneficiary. Sometimes people think they're the same thing, or please give us our review so we can improve our service. Well, no, it's actually you want to give a review so that people buy more from you. So you can put it on your website or on Trustpilot or wherever. But the ultimate beneficiary is you. It's so that you gain more sales by getting more social proof on your website with people giving you hopefully positive reviews. And it's generally led by marketing people who are actually not connected to the operational side of the business. So when the feedback comes in, they generally don't have those plumbed in routes for getting issues resolved, or it's somebody managing the social media and they say DM us. It's not well thought through from an issue resolution. So the beneficiary is, this is more sales for you. Feedback, you might call it internal feedback. These tend to be shorter surveys. The beneficiary, the key difference here is the customer. This is for the customer's benefit. It's like you're giving the customer a way to easily hit the big help button and get in touch with you easily. And it's designed around, and you may not even publish this type of feedback. It's just so that you consistently can keep doing a great job for your customers. So the nub of it, really, the difference between reviews is who's the beneficiary. Is it so you can sell more, or is it so that the customer benefits by finding it easy to raise and get problems fixed? When should I ask for, next one on the list, next one should I ask for? Well, the principle for when to ask is ask at the points in their dealings with you when customers are most likely to have feedback that they want to give. So a new customer in a B2B company, that might be after the account's set up and they place their first order. If it's transactional, e-commerce, it might be after they've placed an order, or phone your contact center, a post-call survey. So the best way to treat feedback is actually like an extra service that you offer your customers, and you want to make that service just as good as all the other things that you do for customers. And you might get into customer journey mapping, of analyzing all those touch points that customers have with you. The beauty of a customer feedback program, you don't have to boil the ocean on day one. It's not like a new CRM system or a new accounting system. You can do it piecemeal. You can start small and start at one touch point, experience the benefits and build your confidence. And what then happens is there's somebody will come and look over your shoulder and think, that's really useful information. How can I get? Then there's a pull from the rest of the organization, and they embrace the feedback because it helps them do their jobs better and meet their goals, rather than you trying to have to impose it on them and force them through it. So how to create a good survey. We'll probably need to cover this in a separate webinar because there's a lot of material to what makes a good survey. But just a few guidelines here. Keep it short. Aim for 20. A customer can tell you whether they like you or don't like you in 20 seconds very easily. In the positioning and the wording, you want to give permission for them to be honest. Perhaps if they've got in a B2B, they may well have an account manager, and it can be quite awkward. You tend to either not reply or say, yeah, everything's great, but something, it doesn't or she doesn't work with you the way that you want to. Phrase it in a way that says, please tell us anything at all that we can do to make things better for you. Then you've removed the awkwardness. You say, actually, tell us anything because we want to know. So then it's giving the customer permission to be honest. And the questions, well, shorthand thumbnail for how to choose the questions. Just think about the point you're asking, and at that point, what do your customers want you to be brilliant at? And remember, it's not a good survey for the customer. If that's our goal, is how to make it a good survey. It's not a good survey for the customer if, when they hit the submit button, nothing happens. So sharing feedback, final point. This is just an example from our software, but you can get all sorts of really useful information presented as daily reminders, instant alerts, summaries, heat maps, ranking scores, reports, and the individual comments, those verbatim comments that are really powerful for people in the company to read. So sharing the feedback, getting it. This is sometimes a really effective way to make improvements, perhaps in a back office function. The accounts people don't see themselves as customer facing or having any impact on customer experience, but boy, do they sometimes. An over aggressive credit controller can can upset your best customer and you wouldn't know about it. So those verbatim comments from customers are really useful for showing to everybody in the company, so that everybody doesn't know how your customers feel about you. Sorry, rattled through that last one there. I'm conscious of the clock. Next steps, if you want to learn more, we're not here to sell today. The main aim of this webinar is to share what we know. And if you found it helpful, brilliant, that's mission accomplished for us. But sometimes people are at the point where they want to find out more or to run a small trial. And if you'd like a personal consultation or a trial of the software, we offer those both free and without any obligation at all. Just to help you understand where we fit in the market, we specialize in the mid-market. So most often the people who buy our software will be comparing us with Qualtrics, Medallia, Confirm-It, Rant and Rave, and so on. And they'll find that we give the same features and benefits as those products, but a price that's much more suitable for mid-market companies. And actually, unlike those companies, we publish our prices too on the website, so you can check whether we're in the right budget range for you. We've won lots of, we don't like to brag about it, but we have won lots of user satisfaction awards. So it seems that our service and our advice, they seem to be a factor in people choosing us too. We will follow up. We'll send out an email with those data contacts, other resources that I've cross-referenced. There's a whole video on how to choose the metric, and a feedback form for you to suggest other things you'd like to cover. If you'd like individual consultations, please do get in touch. We'd be happy to have a one-to-one with you. But thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.